Hello and welcome to another lesson of VTskills course. Today we are going to present to you a case study relative to the application of SPV principles on spraying management. The case study concerns an example of optimized pest management using 4.0 monitoring technologies. The case study is representative of innovative defense scenarios in viticulture. In this context, the evolving EU guidelines and new technologies on the market were also taken into consideration. The optimal execution of a phytosanitary treatment consists of four main phases: data acquisition, decision implementation, operation execution, and the tracking of the work performed. These phases are necessary both operationally and as an element of management documentation. Phase 1, data acquisition, requires information about meteorological parameters, including air temperature, relative air humidity, or wind speed, and millimeters of rain fallen in a previous time interval. The correct acquisition of data requires field inspections to verify the state of vine development and its growth, the presence of symptoms on the plants, the assessment of their extent, and the location of their spatial distribution in the vineyard and within individual vines. Phase 2 consists of deciding whether or not to carry out treatment and the type of treatment to be carried out. The definition of the need for intervention is based on damage thresholds specific to each pathogen and pest. This variable parameter depends on the pathogen and pest, so knowledge of pathogen dynamics is essential for effective intervention. Further aspects to be considered relate to the choice of plant protection product and the configuration of the technology used to apply the plant protection products. Phase 2 ends with the definition of the general configuration parameters of the sprayer, and in particular, the settings in terms of volumes to be applied per hectare. Phase 3 consists of the configuration of the executive phase of the application, spraying band, parameters of forward speed and volume applied per hectare, and the logistics of passage within the vineyard. These parameters are recorded either on the onboard terminals of tractors equipped with isobus systems or on dedicated terminals for digitized support of the application of plant protection products. It is therefore necessary to configure the digital technology to operate the sprayer according to the desired parameters. Phase 4 consists of systematically organizing information by integrating the analysis of the quality of product distribution, the evaluation of operational parameters and telemetry data of the worksite, and the monitoring of the presence and symptomatology of the pathogen, in order to verify the effectiveness of the intervention and ensure the traceability of operations in the field. What is grapevine downy mildew? Downy mildew is a cryptogamic disease caused by the Umicete Plasmopara viticola, a pathogenic microorganism mainly affecting grape leaves, shoots, and bunches. Its presence represents one of the most serious threats to viticulture, especially in hot and humid climates. Understanding the mechanisms of infection and the environmental factors that regulate its spread is essential to set up an effective integrated pest management strategy that combines productivity, sustainability, and environmental protection. The pathogen spreads through mobile spores, zoospores, that are transported by wind and water. The most significant risks of infection occur 3 to 6 weeks after bud break, that is, during the young cluster's leaf expansion and growth phase until the berries reach pea size. Inadequate defense against downy mildew in these phases can lead to severe production losses, compromised grape quality, reduced plant longevity, increased exposure to secondary infections. Ideal environmental factors for downy mildew include temperature. The release of zoospores from oospores occurs in free water and with temperatures above 8 degrees Celsius, optimum condition 18 to 22 degrees Celsius. A rule of thumb commonly used by wine growers is the 10 hours, 10 minutes, and 24 seconds rule. That is, 3 basic parameters must be met for primary infection to occur: a minimum temperature of 10 degrees Celsius, at least 10 mm of precipitation in the preceding 24 hours, humidity and the presence of water on the vegetation for at least 24 hours. If the vegetation remains wet for at least 8 hours and temperatures remain suitable, the fungus can penetrate the plant tissues. After an incubation period of 4 to 21 days, depending on the temperature, the typical translucent, yellowish, roundish oil spots appear on the upper page of the leaves, often accompanied by whitish fruiting on the underside of the leaf in high humidity. Secondary infections occur when environmental conditions remain favorable for the proliferation of the pathogen. Secondary spores, sporangia, are produced on visible lesions and may give rise to new foci of infection. They are generated when the relative humidity is 98%. The temperature is 13 degrees Celsius, the optimal condition is 20 to 25 degrees Celsius, and there is leaf wetness for 3 hours before sunrise, with at least 4 consecutive hours of darkness. In the presence of these conditions, sporulation occurs rapidly. It may give rise to new cycles of infection every 7 days, contributing to the progressive spread of the disease if containment measures are not taken. So, to summarize, infection cycles are divided into primary and secondary. Primary infections originate from overwintering oospores in plant residues that have fallen to the ground. In spring, under favorable conditions, temperature above 10 degrees Celsius, and at least 10 mm of rain in 24 to 48 hours, the oospores germinate by producing mobile zoospores that reach the young vine tissues, particularly the leaves. The first infections are manifested by the typical oil spots on the upper page of the leaves and whitish mold on the underside. The critical time for the onset of primary infections is often indicated by the 3-10s method: 10 centimeters shoot, 10 mm rain, 10 degrees Celsius temperature. Secondary infections, on the other hand, occur during the growing season due to the production of sporangiophores and sporangia on already infected lesions. These sporangia, transported by wind or rain, infect new tissue in high humidity and temperatures between 12 and 25 degrees Celsius. Secondary infections may recur cyclically throughout the summer, contributing to the rapid spread of the disease, especially if environmental conditions remain favorable. How can we recognize the symptoms? Symptoms are visible on leaves, inflorescences, and clusters. Yellow oil spots appear on the upper pages of the leaves, initially edged in chocolate color, which lose their dark halo with time. On young leaves, these spots may expand up to 5 centimeters in diameter, and in the presence of numerous lesions, may coalesce to cover the entire leaf. As they age or during hot periods, the center of the spots dries out and turns reddish-brown, retaining a yellow halo at the margins. After hot and humid nights, a whitish mold typical of downy mildew appears on the underside of infected leaves. Infection of mature leaves in late summer and autumn causes a mosaic symptomatology with small yellow-brown angular spots bordering the veins. In the case of severe infection, the leaves fall prematurely, leaving only the petiole attached. The bunches are most susceptible to downy mildew during the flowering period. Berries become resistant when they reach 5 to 6 mm in diameter, the size of a pea, but may still dry out if the infection affects the pedicel or the rachis of the cluster. Affected flowers, berries, and entire bunches take on a brown, greasy appearance. In warm and humid climatic conditions, white mold appears on infected surfaces, flowers, berries, or stalks. Infected young berries harden, take on a coloring. How can it be monitored? Monitoring can be done by initially inspecting leaves for primary infections and then inflorescences and clusters for secondary infections on both sides of 300 vines. It is necessary to check both the outer leaves and those inside the canopy, which are less exposed to sunlight. Particular attention must be paid to the vegetation close to the ground, especially in areas subject to water stagnation, such as valley bottoms. It is necessary to use a hand lens to check for white mold on suspicious spots, as the overwintering spores are not visible. It is essential to observe the presence of yellow oil spots on both leaf pages. During the monitoring process, it is necessary to mark the infection spots to monitor the development of the disease and assess the effectiveness of treatments. The monitoring of weather conditions is essential for predicting the development of downy mildew. It can be carried out in several ways, manually using a rain gauge and a thermometer, recording maximum and minimum values. These instruments must be reset daily and provide only a general indication of the existence and occurrence of conditions for developing the disease. Automatically, using computerized weather stations that record parameters such as temperature, rainfall, leaf wetness, and relative humidity. Some models also include basic disease prediction functions through forecasting models or decision support systems, which process weather data to provide more precise indications of infection risk and treatment timing. For the monitoring and management of grapevine downy mildew, the decision-making phase is based on 2 main approaches: empirical models and mechanistic models. Empirical models are based on the mathematical representation of a set of observed data and are very specific to the application area. The prominent examples include those set out above based on the 10 hours 10 minutes and 24 seconds rule, or the October 10-10 rule, which is based on simple climate thresholds to determine the risk of infection. Other empirical methods are the EPI, État potentiel d'infection, T4.1.2 model, which estimates oospore maturation by observing local conditions and adaptation to the specific area. Conversely, mechanistic models define functional relationships between the measured variables and those required to estimate risk, being less dependent on local specificities. Some well-known examples are DowGRAPI is a DSS based on a mechanistic model for grapevine downy mildew management. It simulates the infection and development of the pathogen based on meteorological data, temperature, humidity, rain, providing predictions on the risk of infection and suggesting the optimal time for treatment. It was developed in France and is used for more rational treatment planning. VTskills is a decision support system, DSS, developed in Germany. It has specific modules for several vine diseases, including downy mildew, Plasmopara viticola. It is based on mechanistic models that process local climatic data to simulate the pathogen cycle, predict infections, and help decide when to intervene with treatments. RimPro is a DSS developed by a research group in the Netherlands and widely used in viticulture that simulates in detail the development of infections, for example, for downy mildew and powdery mildew, taking into account hourly weather conditions. It provides clear graphs that help the wine grower identify periods of increased risk and optimize the timing of phytosanitary treatments. Such support systems are implemented on smartphone apps or web portals that operators can view. They generally have purchase formulas based on annual or multi-annual subscriptions. Most modern DSS include a notification system that alerts the user when the model predicts the presence of the pathogen and identifies the optimal time for treatment. Which product to use? Now that we know that our plants are at risk, we must prevent infection. For this, a plant protection product must be applied. In organic farming, there are restrictions on the products available. In organic farming, we do not cure, we prevent. We therefore use products that create conditions incompatible with the action or development of the pathogen. In addition to this, it is essential to consider new natural solutions, including resistance inducers that activate the plant's natural defenses against pathogens, corroborants that improve the efficacy of treatments or strengthen the plant against abiotic and biotic stresses, and biostimulants that promote growth, root development, and stress tolerance. Further elements are the choice of Peewee, from the German Pilzwiderstandsfrei, fungus-resistant varieties, that is, vines selected to have high resistance to the primary fungal diseases of the vine, such as downy mildew and powdery mildew. Alternatively, or in combination, microorganisms applied to the soil or root system, such as mycorrhizae, symbiotic fungi, can be used. By colonizing the vine's roots, they improve water uptake and nutrients, especially phosphorus, strengthening the plant, stimulating its natural defenses, and making it more resistant to stress and disease, reducing the need for chemical treatments. In organic farming, vine defense against downy mildew and powdery mildew is based on using substances permitted by Regulation EU 2018/848. Copper is used against downy mildew, Plasmopara viticola, a contact fungicide that prevents the spores from germinating. Several copper formulations can be used organically: Bordeaux mixture, a mixture of copper sulfate and lime, copper oxychloride, copper hydroxide, cuprous oxide, and tribasic copper sulfate. These formulations differ in the speed of release of the cupric ions and persistence. Bordeaux mixture is slower and more persistent, while hydroxide is faster but less long-lasting. The choice depends on climatic and phenological conditions. Faster products are indicated in active growth, and more persistent ones are in rainy periods. Sulfur, powdery or wettable, is used for powdery mildew, Erysiphenicator. The next step is quantifying the mixture volumes to be applied to the crop. The theoretical principles to follow are to progressively adapt the volume of mixture according to the development achieved by the crop, while respecting the basic condition, that is, to remain below the percolation limit, runoff limits. This limit is reached when the droplets on the leaves are spread at such a close level that they aggregate and subsequently run off onto the leaf surface, resulting in point losses. To determine the correct volume that can be applied, the tree row volume method can be used. That is a technique that uses manual measurements of the height and thickness of the vineyard to define a volume of mixture to be applied to dilute the plant protection products. The calculation involves measuring the interrow indicated with R in the image, the height of the plant indicated with the letter T, and the measurement of the thickness letter C. We then multiply height by thickness by a factor of 10, divide this by the interrow measurement, and multiply the whole by the coefficient EE. This coefficient, determined by scientific studies, considers the level of variability of vineyard development and ranges from 10 to 120. The minimum values indicate a very small canopy, and the maximum values are the opposite. Generally, the values to be adopted for the vineyard range from 30 to 100. Once the theoretical volume to be used has been determined, it is then necessary to calculate the volume that the sprayer must deliver in 1 hectare, LH, about the structural characteristics of the vineyard. The information to determine this is the total flow of the machine delivered per minute, which is in turn determined by the flow rate of the nozzles or of the nozzles in low-volume machines, and the operating pressure, the forward speed of the yard, which must remain in the range of 5 to 7 kilometers per h, the size of the inter-row spacing, and the number of rows treated at each pass. The next step is the choice of spraying criteria for the machinery. Sprayers can be divided into low-volume machines, that is, less than 350 liters per hectare, and medium-high volume up to 500 liters per hectare. Low-volume machines, better known as pneumatic, use the Venturi principle to atomize the mixture. The result is very homogeneous droplets, with a fine diameter of 100 micrometers. The advantages are easy to convey to the foliage, but the disadvantages include the drift and limited versatility in terms of plant protection products that can be used. Medium-high volume machines exploit the pressure generated by a pump and nozzles in which the pressure drop and consequent atomization are generated. The advantages are the possibility of using different nozzles capable of generating a vast spectrum of droplet sizes that can be used on multiple targets. The choice of nozzle is paramount, and several aspects must be considered while ensuring effective, sustainable, and economical treatment. A suitable nozzle optimizes vegetation coverage, limits drift, and reduces product waste. One of the first criteria to consider is the type of target and product. Systemic or contact fungicides and insecticides require uniform coverage on leaves and bunches. Treatments for canopy diseases must ensure penetration into the plant wall. However, applications in the expanded canopy phase require more volume and adequate depth distribution. This implies choosing nozzles capable of generating droplets of controlled size to balance coverage and drift risk. The second criterion is the size of the droplets. In brief, the following main classes can be defined for use in the vineyard. Fine drops, 100-200 micrometers, excellent coverage and penetration, but high risk of drift. Medium drops, 200-400 micrometers, good compromise between coverage and drift, often recommended. Coarse drops, greater than 400 micrometers, low drift but lower coverage on complex surfaces. The third criterion to consider is the type of nozzle. Full or hollow cone nozzles generate fine droplets and improve penetration, ideal for dense canopies and hidden targets. Fan nozzles, standard or anti-drift. Uniform lateral distribution, useful for less dense vertical panels or targeted treatments. Air injection nozzles reduce drift due to larger droplets and internal air bubbles, limiting fragmentation into ultra-fine droplets. Each nozzle has an ideal pressure range that influences its performance. For example, drift nozzles operate at 3 to 8 bars. The ISO 10625 standard makes it possible to immediately identify each nozzle's performance through a specific code/color. At the same operating pressure, ISO nozzles with the same code/color always deliver the same flow rate, liters minute, regardless of the manufacturer or type of nozzle. For example, at a pressure of 3 bars, a yellow ISO 02 ISO nozzle will consistently deliver 0.8 liters minute regardless of the make and type, cone nozzle, fan nozzle, mirror nozzle, etc. Let us now return to our calculations. At the operational level, the following steps are followed. Assuming a coefficient I of 50, we proceed as follows. Step 1, field survey. We measure the height of the canopy from the lowest to the highest part, for example 1.2 m, and the thickness, for example 0.5 m, of the vegetation wall, as well as the distance between the rows, for example 2.5 m. The coefficient I considers the actual crown density. A value of 50% is typical for an intermediate vegetative development. This means that only half of the calculated geometric volume is considered because the wall is not as complete as a solid wall of leaves. The TRV is therefore determined using the formula seen, resulting in 1,200 cubic meters per HA. We then define a reference volume, VR, that represents the ideal volume of liquid to obtain good vegetation coverage, neither too little, which would compromise the effectiveness of the treatment, nor too much, which would cause wastage and risks of dripping. It is therefore a parameter that helps to size the quantity of mixture to be sprayed according to the actual plant volume, calculated with the TRV, thus adapting the dose to the vigor and development of the plant. For example, a TRV of 150 L1,000M3 is chosen, a typical value for low to medium volume treatments that balance efficacy and volume reduction. We then multiply the TRV by the 150 out of 1,000 ratio, obtaining a spraying volume of 180 L-Ha. Assuming we have a plant protection product with a concentration of 0.2% indicated on the label, that is 200 ml diluted in 100 liters of water, the dose will be 1.8 multiplied by 200, so 360 ml per hectare. The optimization of plant protection products today is also achieved with variable rate sprayers. These machines are equipped with 4 main elements to differentiate the application of the crop protection mixture: a satellite receiver that indicates the correct position, an onboard terminal that consists of a control actuation unit, an electrical and data connection to the sprayer called isobus, and a spray automation system based on adaptive dispensing solenoid valves. For operation, it is necessary to create a spray map, which is generally based on vegetative development, such as tree row volume, or leaf area, such as leaf wall area, in vector format, to be uploaded to the machine via a flash memory. Maps can be created using smartphone applications like iAgro or other free platforms like AgriSat. These machines, which can also be used in traditional mode with constant volume spraying per hectare, require an adjustment of the number of nozzles operated during the season, which must be selected to cover the entire vegetative strip, avoiding upward and downward dispersions. For machines equipped with swiveling conveyors, it is necessary to adjust the inclination so that the air and mixture jet are directed exclusively at the foliage. VRA machines also offer the advantage of being able to track the work done by the machine, thus monitoring the quantities that were actually distributed during spraying. Operation tracking is now realized with 4.0 technologies. They involve using remote telecommunication systems between spraying sites, web platforms, local monitors, or smartphone apps. Communication is carried out via GSM GPRS modems using geo-reference data packets containing tractor and sprayer information. Generally, 4.0 systems also allow for remote interaction so that the operator on the farm can communicate in real time with the operator in the field in the event of machine malfunctions being detected. In the most advanced systems, it is also possible to support sending safety alerts to the operator when critical thresholds are exceeded. For example, in areas with a high gradient, maximum thresholds can be set for lateral and longitudinal slopes that can be tackled to ensure the stability of the worksite, which are required by accelerometers in the tractor and/or sprayer machine. When exceeded, a message is sent to the operator, who intervenes by returning to a safe condition. The body of the technology is a board for acquiring and sending digital and analog signals connected to the tractor and operating machine sensors. Different communication protocols are available, ranging from Wi-Fi to Bluetooth, to ensure maximum versatility. Recently, 4.0 connection systems have been developed to monitor the data communication lines inside tractors and operating machines, such as the CAN bus protocol. This protocol, initially developed in the automotive sector, is an ISO 11783 standard widely used on agricultural machinery for the safe and standardized rapid exchange of data between control units and electronic components without complex point-to-point wiring. In the most advanced versions, the operator has a visualization, configuration, and control interface for the sprayer installed inside the tractor cab that allows complete control of the operation. Technology 4.0 today offers aftermarket solutions that enable digitizing even machinery without any digital element. Modules are available to be positioned on mechanical equipment such as sprayers, shredders, cultivators, etc., and it is possible to associate the equipment information with type, model, working width, etc. The module communicates via Bluetooth to smartphones or monitors on board the tractor, thus recording the details of the duration of the operation carried out, the area worked, and the operator who carried it out. In addition, when combined with control monitors, it is also possible to obtain driving support in operations that require attention to overlapping passes. The result is the digitization of traditional construction sites not equipped with electronics. The more advanced versions include advanced expansion modules that allow additional tractor and sprayer parameters to be configured. In systems with an onboard monitor, it is therefore possible to display machine parameters and the progress of the work carried out in real time. A colored trace shows the path taken by the sprayer and the spraying parameters in continuous. It is therefore possible to monitor the flow of the sprayed mixture in real time, the operating pressure, the speed of progress, and in other words, all the necessary elements that allow control of the correct execution of the treatment. Tracking the treated area, for example, allows the operator to avoid overlapping spraying and therefore overdoses and inefficiencies. In addition, the operator can trace the work carried out and check its performance. The workflow involves the operator selecting a work area, generally a plot of land, and then entering the spraying operation with the previously determined parameters of application volume per hectare to be distributed. The system can then assist the operator in maintaining a correct forward speed or, in the more automated versions, intervene in the direct control of the sprayer to ensure that the theoretically planned volume is sprayed. Once the job is completed, it is possible to obtain descriptive summary data on work productivity and time. The operator can then use this information to improve their work by reducing inefficiencies such as breaks and downtime. Among the outputs that can be obtained from telemetry systems are digital raster-type data, in which it is possible to see the liters per hectare dispensed by the machine and acquired by the sprayer's flow sensor. This provides an overview and specific details of the spatial distribution of spraying. This makes it possible to highlight where anomalies have been recorded and to study the causes that led to them. These causes may be due to anthropic factors or related problems, such as unforeseen events such as elements hindering progress. The data displayed allows instant analysis and corrections to be implemented. For example, where deviations from the set spraying volume or untreated areas are evident, punctual action can be taken to maintain biological efficacy. In the demonstration map created, the areas in dark red where a spraying error was generated about other parts of the vineyard due to underspraying are evident, as are those portions at the beginning of the row where the operator delayed the start of spraying. By comparing the flow rate with the operating pressure recorded during operation, the opposite trend between pressure and flow rate can be seen, that is, maximum pressure, minimum flow. In the continuous red line, a deliberate obstruction of the machinery was generated to simulate a malfunction that reduced the flow rate and increased the pressure. Similar considerations can be made about forward speed and automatic pressure compensation to ensure consistency in the flow rate delivered by the machinery. Today's spraying technologies are equipped with two main elements to control the maintenance of spray proportionality based on the DPM and DPA forward speed. DPM stands for directly proportional to engine speed distribution. Installing such devices is now standard practice even on modern so-called entry-level machines, whether manually or electrically activated. Compared to the more obsolete constant pressure regulating units, they are equipped with a proportional regulating valve and additional section valves with calibrated returns, the former guaranteeing a constancy in the quantity distributed per unit area for variations in forward speed of up to plus 20%. At the same time, the latter prevents pressure increases and therefore the flow rate to the nozzles when the delivery of the mixture of individual boom sections is shut off. DPA stands for directly proportional to advanced distribution, that is, the dose distributed per unit area is kept constant even with any variation in forward speed. Apart from rare cases of purely mechanical DPA controllers, most are controlled by an electronic control unit, which processes signals from flow meters, pressure transducers, and speed sensors. Nowadays, any sprayer machine at a certain level is equipped with them. DPAs are, in fact, not very recent, but still relatively expensive innovations. Ultimately, the 4.0 system equipped with sensors for monitoring makes it possible to visualize in detail the control elements of spraying, and thus to intervene either in real time with targeted corrections or with ex-post interventions to compensate for errors or to improve field logistics by, for example, facilitating site transit in the vineyard. Finally, it is possible to view operating results with details of time worked, materials used, and quantities distributed. This information is instrumental in the preparation of more streamlined administrative management. Thanks to the exploitation of time and consumption data, for example, for the constant scheduling of the maintenance of tractors and sprayers used, and for the realization of economies of scale, for example, in the purchase of all consumable materials that must be periodically replaced, such as oils, seals, nozzles. Further advantages are represented by the creation of a database of the time required to carry out vineyard-specific defense operations that farm managers can use for scheduling activities. The last phase is verifying the correct execution of the phytosanitary treatment. This can be done at different levels of detail, using more or less advanced techniques to define coverage and deposition. Coverage, expressed as a percentage, indicates the pesticide surface area. Deposition means the amount of micrograms of pesticide per square centimeter of leaf. Water-sensitive paper, WSP, yellow sheets that turn blue or green when in contact with drops of water or pesticide mixture, is sufficient at the operational level. These papers are placed at strategic and representative points in the foliage during a treatment, as shown in the picture. After the sprayer passes over, the maps are collected and analyzed visually or using specific software to measure the percentage of surface area covered by the spots and the distribution and size of the droplets. ISO 22522, 2007 provides precise and standardized guidelines for evaluating spray distribution on vertical targets such as the plant walls of vineyards and orchards. According to practical guidance from companies such as Syngenta and the Guidelines for Integrated Pest Management, minimum coverage thresholds are recommended to ensure treatment efficacy. In particular, for systemic or penetrating products, it is advisable to achieve at least 20 to 30% coverage on WSP maps, while for contact products or particularly dense canopies, the recommended threshold rises to 30 to 40%. However, it is not enough to achieve the average percentage. It is essential that the droplet distribution is uniform, with no completely uncovered areas, and that the number of drops per square centimeter is sufficient, usually at least 40 if you use some 60 drops/cm2. When the coverage detected is insufficient or uneven, the sprayer's settings must be adjusted. The operating pressure, the forward speed, the choice and orientation of the nozzles, the overall flow rate, or the volume of mixture distributed per hectare can all be modified. The objective is to achieve adequate and uniform wetting over the entire target vegetation, optimizing the use of the plant protection product and minimizing the risk of drift and environmental impact. Systematically using water-sensitive maps and applying the methodology described by the ISO 22522, 2007 standard not only improves the technical quality of the treatment but also complies with the requirements of integrated pest management and transparently documents the agronomic choices made. The pest management process is iterative. It requires constant evaluation and continuous adaptation. Knowing the enemy, pests, diseases, is essential for targeting strategies. Decisions must be based on concrete data which can take different forms: field observations, water maps for coverage, standardized measurements, ISO 22522, reference volumes, and indices such as TRV. Digitization facilitates the collection and management of this data, but does not replace the expertise and experience of the technician or farmer. Efficiency, effectiveness, and timing can be achieved by adjusting nozzles, pressure, speed, and distributed volumes with checks such as those with WSP maps. Finally, reporting and post-operational analysis are fundamental to documenting choices, complying with integrated pest management standards, and continuously improving the quality and sustainability of treatments. That's it for this case study and lesson. Here you can find some reference on this topic. See you next time.